We got a county commissioner over here.
Yes, Jerry Shepperson, Weston County Commissioner. How soon do you think we can expect some sort of a ruling from our judge out there?
I wish that I could give you a definitive date, and this is Harriet Hagemen. It could be a matter of weeks, it could be months, it could be longer than that. I do believe that it was very clear to the judge today that time is of the essence, and that we have a certain amount of urgency associated with this decision. So I am hopeful that Judge Johnson will issue a decision, sooner rather than later. It is just difficult to predict what a judge is going to do and when they're going to do it. We will let you know as soon as the decision comes out. In fact, we will have it across our computer system within a matter of seconds of when it's filed. And as soon as that happens, I will distribute it to the Wolf Coalition members so that you have it.
Thank you.
It's not related to the Montana decision. Montana is in the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals, and we are in the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. We don't want the Montana courts or the 9th Circuit in San Francisco making a decision about Wyoming's management plan. And it's one of the reasons why the Wolf Coalition has consistently made sure that when a decision is made by the Fish and Wildlife Service, that any filing takes place here in Cheyenne. So what will happen is the Montana case with Judge Malloy will go along on one track, and I don't know what he will end up doing, but that will go along on one track. This is a different issue, and the issue that's before Judge Johnson is the federal respondents or the Fish and Wildlife Service's rejection of the Wyoming plan and issuing a final rule without including Wyoming as part of the delisting process. So Montana's on a separate track. And we'll see what happens with Judge Johnson, but we definitely feel it needs to remain in Wyoming. This is not related to the Montana decision. Montana is in the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals, and we are in the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. We don't want the Montana courts or the 9th Circuit in San Francisco making a decision about Wyoming's management plan. And it's one of the reasons why the Wolf Coalition has consistently made sure that when a decision is made by the Fish and Wildlife Service, that any filing takes place here in Cheyenne. So what will happen is the Montana case with Judge Malloy will go along on one track, and I don't know what he will end up doing, but that will go along on one track. This is a different issue, and the issue that's before Judge Johnson is the federal respondents or the Fish and Wildlife Service's rejection of the Wyoming plan and issuing a final rule without including Wyoming as part of the delisting process. So Montana's on a separate track, and we'll see what happens with Judge Johnson, but we definitely feel it needs to remain in Wyoming. Now, Haley, do you have a question?
Absolutely, Harriet. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. My question is, in the oral argument today, what did you hear as far as the opinions of whether or not Wyoming wolves can be treated as a separate population? I know that's been one of the key differences here.
Oddly enough, I find that the Fish and Wildlife Service is attempting to stay away from, they're trying to pretend that they're staying away from the idea of dictating to Wyoming that the entire state needs to be trophy game animals. And so they won't address the question of the dual classification so much as they keep focusing on the size of the trophy game area. And as Jay Jurdy, the Senior Assistant Attorney General, made clear today, the reason that we've designated the area that we have as the trophy game animal area is because that's what the Fish and Wildlife Service demanded. So our trophy game designation is actually a change from where it was in the original 2003 plan. It has been expanded at the request of the Fish and Wildlife Service, but they continue to come back with this idea that it's not large enough. I think that the reason they're doing that, and they don't want to attack predator status head on, is because they know that they do not have any science or any biology or any information that supports their push, if you will, to designate wolves trophy game statewide. So they don't want to take that position, they just want to force Wyoming down that chute, if you will. So it isn't so much that they say we can't have predator status, they just won't approve a plan that has it. So it's kind of a bit of double dealing on their side, if you will, in terms of, I believe, the arguments that they're making.
All right, thank you, Harriet.
Any other questions?
I imagine you're optimistic about the judge's ruling given the case today. given if the judge does rule in your favor, whenever that comes down, is there any end in sight? Is this just gonna keep going and ruling
You know,
after ruling?
it shouldn't keep going, and I think that that's one of the frustrations I've had. Perhaps you might have noticed today that I seem to be just a bit frustrated in terms of how this whole scenario has played out over the last 20 years now, and we never should have been in this position, I think is what's so frustrating to me. When you look at the reason for the non-essential experimental designation under the Endangered Species Act, when you look at the 1987 recovery plan, when you look at the 1994 final environmental impact statement in the final rule, when you look at the history of wolf introduction into Yellowstone National Park in the greater Yellowstone area, the very purpose of what they did and the way that that whole program was designed was to avoid the situation we're in right now, which is fighting over an endangered species that's not endangered. And so what we have is a situation where we did everything that the feds asked us to do. Wyoming has done everything that the feds have asked. We have identified an area where we will protect the wolf population. We have a recovered wolf population 30-fold. We have we have a big enough area to protect the wolves at 15 breeding pairs and 150 wolves. We've done everything that has been asked of us. But what we see is continual administrative and federal creep. And that is an effort to expand the area in which wolves will be protected in Wyoming. An expansion of the number of wolves that we should be required to protect. And so we should end this. What should happen is the wolves should be turned over to Wyoming for management. We should manage them at or above recovery levels. We ought to be able to have a balance so that we are able to protect our other wildlife and our livestock industries. And everybody should walk away happy at the incredible success of this experiment. But it has become so political that they don't allow us to do that. So I'm hoping that if we get a decision today that is the right decision to allow Wyoming to manage the wolves, that the Fish and Wildlife Service will take that at face value and turn over management to Wyoming.
And if it doesn't go in your favor?
We take the next step. I mean, that's up to the Wolf Coalition. I can't prejudge that. I'm going to walk away from today saying we won. So
Sure felt
it's
I'd like to ask some of the other